Welcome to Behavioral Health Today. I'm your host, Peter Fenger, and my guest today is Manny Fiteni. Manny is a dynamic leader and the CEO of My Growth Corporation, where he empowers individuals and organizations through his groundbreaking approach to personal and professional development. With over 30 years of corporate experience, Manny has developed the principle of mind congruency, which focuses on aligning the conscious and subconscious mind to create a focused, high performing mindset. His real world insights into leadership, team dynamics, and personal growth have helped countless professionals unlock their true potential. Manny is also the creator of Mind Growth 360 and Creators Agency, platforms dedicated to fostering growth and elevating brands. Through his work, he inspires others to embrace meaningful change and thrive both personally and professionally. In our talk today, we'll explore how aligning the conscious and subconscious mind through mind congruency can transform personal growth, leadership, team performance, relationships, and even the way we guide the next generation, with practical insights from Manny's decades of real world experience. Manny, I'm so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Well, I know that your work focuses on unlocking potential. And with this focus, you've created My Growth Corporation. So I want to ask you, what was really the inspiration behind your work and the concept behind mind congruency? Where did this really begin?
That's actually a really good question because I'm not sure if there's one particular point, although I do put it in my book that there's a point. Okay, I'll use what I use in the book, which is probably a good starting point. So when I was in high school, I went to a Catholic school and they have religious lessons. But one day I was in a year 11 level, which is, I'm not sure what you call it over there, but very similar to just before you finish high school.
Yeah.
And our principal came to teach us, which he never did.
Hmm.
And basically, he had bought a program around mindset, and he wanted to test it on older children. And essentially, it was a series of videos that talked about the mind, had lots of stories. I can't even tell you exactly what got covered because I can only remember maybe one story from it.
Mm.
But it kind of, I think, took me on a journey of why are some people able to achieve something and others can't? Yet they're highly intelligent. It's not their intelligence that's making them successful. And I think I've always had this interest, even though I went through a whole corporate life. I studied in my own time, went on a personal development journey, and then learned a lot of things along the way.
Yeah. It is interesting, right? Because just that concept of we are all born with the same ability, it's really just sort of unlocking that potential to get there.
Mm.
Right.
Well, I think what we find, and I'll go into my congruence obviously when we come to that point,
Right.
is that we are influenced by things in our world. And in particular, we're influenced by who brought us up, whoever nurtured us at a very young age, in those early first 10 years.
Mm.
And so that their habits, the things that they do are imprinted on us, and their habits were imprinted by their parents and so on. So essentially we are products of past generations, if that makes any sense.
Yes, yes, it does make sense. And you've sort of coined this term, mind congruency, this concept of mind congruency. We're sort of defining this alignment of the conscious and subconscious, right? Those past habits, sort of creating the goals or the some of the behaviors that we have. So talk to me a little bit about your definition of mind congruency and why
Sure.
aligning the conscious and subconscious mind is so important for professional and personal growth.
Okay. So let me kind of use an analogy, and I've used this before with many people, is that if you look at a person, I sometimes look at us as even though we're not computers, there's an analogy that we could use here. So in a computer, we have our keyboard, which is kind of what we input and into our system. And when you key something into a computer, you buy a computer for the first time, you key something in, and suddenly there's an error message. And you go, hold on, I shouldn't be getting an error message. This is what I want it to do.
Yeah.
But behind the scenes is something that was coded, which is your operating system. This is what will happen when this happens. This is what will happen when this happens. Now, let's push this back onto ourselves. Our operating system is subconscious. It's not something we've necessarily trained ourselves. It's something that was imprinted on us at a younger age and then developed depending on our experiences that we go through.
Mhm.
But we're unaware of it. We just get on with life. We do what we want to do. And so let's take this from a business perspective or a professional perspective. Your manager asks you to do something. You might be in a sales environment. Now, there are many different types of people that enter into sales environments, having been inside those. And some people you can give a task and a target and a goal, and they just hone in on that, and they will find a way to achieve it, hopefully in a legal and compliant environment, but they will hone in on that. There's other people that will find every reason why it cannot be achieved. They may not always verbalize it, but they'll internalize it.
Mm.
They'll say to themselves, you can't do that. That's not possible. That won't work. And that's okay to disagree. I'm not saying you can't disagree with an approach, but the operating system has been designed to work a certain way.
Mm.
So this is what we would call self-sabotage. The conscious mind has said, that's the goal we're going for. The subconscious is saying, that's not what I'm going for. I am not conditioned. My operating system is not conditioned to work that way.
Mm.
So until you have this alignment, you have your own internal battle that you're fighting and not consciously aware of.
Yeah, because again, as you sort of just describe this, you're talking about how the subconscious is our long-term memory. And in order to create lasting change and really, ultimately improving someone's potential, it's trying to connect the conscious with the subconscious and
Correct.
trying to create a behavioral change.
Correct.
So then let me ask you the next step of this. How do you go about creating or influencing that change, either through environment or through messaging? What does that look like?
So the first thing is to understand how does the subconscious take in information.
Mhm.
If I just said to you, now, Peter, I need you to do this and do this and do this, depending on your operating system, you're either going to accept it or you're going to reject it. That is not the way to talk to it. The subconscious understands imagery, metaphors, symbols.
Yes.
So let's give an example. We've all watched movies. We've watched movies that we really love and other movies that we don't.
Mhm.
When you're watching a movie, the storyline captures the conscious. It's engaged in what the story is. If a well-made movie has a meaning behind it, the subconscious picks up on the meaning behind it.
Okay.
So this is a structure in an art form in regards to understanding how to structure the stories that we tell, that we talk directly to the subconscious. Now, why do we need to talk directly to the subconscious? Because the conscious mind is like a gatekeeper. It will stop or be a guard and say, no, 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 you can't tell me this. You're not going to influence me. But when I tell a story to you and you get engaged in the story and I've designed it the right way, I talk to both. And that's what a great influencer, for example, will know how to do. I've seen salespeople in my life and many years ago, I worked in financial planning. And even though that is a profession that deals with people's money, etc., you are still trying to engage with someone for them to hand over their life savings and trust you to move forward with their own goals. And, it's changed a lot since the early days, but I can still remember hearing stories of older financial planners who were really just salespeople. They were not in the professional side.
Mhm.
And they were so good at telling stories that people would literally just hand their money straight over to them. Now, we would say that's a con man, but there's also great professionals in this world that know how to talk to teams, that know how to talk to their partners, rather than just talking on a surface level perspective.
Okay, so it goes a little bit more than just context. It weaves in meaning.
Yes, it has to have meaning to the subconscious. It needs to understand, because you are dealing with a program that in a lot of cases, like for you and I, has been around for a long time. These
Yes.
are not new programs. We don't even know how to change it half the time.
Mm.
So we continue it. And you think of traumas and fears. You know, I live in apartments and have lived in apartments for many years, usually at high levels. You invite someone to your apartment, they come in and you go, look at the view. And they go, no, 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 I can't walk out. Now you might have a fear of heights because it's really common. I didn't realize how common it was.
Mm.
And then walk to the edge and they go, no, 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 I'm not walking to the edge. And you go, hold on, I'm not scared of these heights. Why? I know I'm not going to fall over. And so the conditioning is different, and they have a trigger that the moment that something is experienced, they trigger them and it stops them from achieving something that other people can do.
Yeah, I guess you might call that like a limiting belief, right?
Correct.
People are capable of going to the edge, but to kind of rewire that programming takes a little something different in order to change that belief.
Correct. Because they're not aware of it. If you're aware that you have a fear,
Mhm.
you're unaware of maybe what is taking place to start that fear.
Yeah.
So usually a lot of this stuff starts at childhood. You know, like you're scared of dogs and you go, why'd you be scared of dogs? They're beautiful, beautiful animals. But maybe you were barked at roughly, or maybe even attacked by a dog as a child. And these things are much bigger than you when you're small.
Mm.
And so the moment you see a dog, you react, because what's happening in a split second is that image is being replayed back in the subconscious and saying, fight or flight, flight, let's get out of here quickly.
Right.
And so until you change that story, this is one of the things that you're unable to do in your life.
Right, right, right. Because, we can try and be as logical as we want. Once we get into those panic situations, we immediately drop into the subconscious. We start to go to what is sort of hardwired into us. So you're talking a little bit about how story emphasizes the tool for change. What is it about maybe the mechanism of the story, or is there like a specific formula in order to craft that story that helps people communicate their message in order to influence change?
So the first step when presenting a story is the rapport. Everybody who's in personal development is aware of this. You got to get along with a person first, or they got resistance. So
Yes.
you build rapport when you're telling a story. It has to be relatable, I think, in some ways. So they kind of engage with it. They go, I get this. This relates to my story. So when I was an executive and a senior manager, and I would have issues with a staff member who maybe wasn't performing, number one, I'd understand the story of why they are where they are. But number two, I would tell them a story of my own career, because those of us who've been around for a long time have probably experienced exactly the same as you.
Mm.
And then I would tell them a story. It doesn't have to be true, but I always tell a true story of what has happened either to me or I've seen in somebody else. So that firstly, they relate to the story and their subconscious is starting to see it differently. You needed to see it from different perspective. So the subconscious does not know the difference between what is real and what is not real. You could tell a false story and it will believe it. I mean, your conscious mind is the part of you that goes,
Yeah.
no, that's not true, right? The subconscious, if you can talk to the subconscious, it doesn't know the difference.
Hmm.
So yes, if you want to create change, you need to go down that path. You need to build a rapport. The structure is your question. There's different ways of structuring the story. Number one, I've given you the very simple approach, which most people listening will do that approach. Another one's a little bit more detailed, whereby you start off with a story. Firstly, the conscious mind is engaged, but you don't complete the story. You then move into another story. And what's happening is the subconscious is picking all these things up. The conscious mind is going, you haven't closed the first story. So you
Mhm.
go into a second story, go 3/4 into that story as well. As these messages are being layered into the subconscious, you may go into a third story, complete the third story, and then start to complete the other two. You go
Mm.
back to the previous ones. So the conscious mind then goes, I have closure because now I know what happened. It's a bit like a bit like watching it or reading a book and going, what happened to the characters? So you finish the story to appease the conscious mind. The subconscious is having layered these messages
Mm.
through more than one story.
Yeah. With the way you're describing it, I think it takes a lot of preparation, right? You're asking the communicator to really elevate their communication skills because I think when we're talking, we're naturally sort of processing ideas into words to communicate messages. Now, taking that a step further into stories, I think really elevates communication skills to another level. So when you are communicating or trying to convey some of these concepts, how do you invite people into maybe this way of communication? Are you always jumping into stories, or is there a time and a place?
Yes, I think there's a time and a place. I encourage
Mhm.
stories for the reasons I've explained.
Yeah.
Let's use a business environment because I'm very experienced in that environment.
Yeah.
And this can be an HR environment. W- As we mentioned before, the first thing is to get along with them and try to build rapport. Not always easy sometimes, depending on your circumstances, but I usually come from a place of trying to understand the other individual. Why are they reacting the way they're reacting? You know, you can work with people and you go, they're, they've been really crazy lately. What are they doing? They're doing this. And then you sit down with them and you talk to them and you
Mm.
say, what's happening? Now, they won't always necessarily tell you. It could be at home. They could be having marital issues. These are things that, you know, some employees and if there's managers or, you know, people that own businesses are listening are saying, oh, but I don't want to go there. And I get that. I understand that. You don't want to pry. It isn't prying, it's understanding. How can you possibly understand somebody if you're not prepared to talk to them, to listen to
Yeah.
them?
Mhm.
And once they start to trust you and you build that rapport, then they start to open up and say, look, this is happening at home. And it's at that point that you will bring your experience, you'll bring your stories to the forefront of how someone else you know or yourself has experienced it and how you handled it. And so it allows both parts of your minds to start processing and saying, oh, it isn't just me, for example. It's a little bit like if you've ever read a really inspirational book and you're going, I'm so inspired by this because the storyline was there. You know, you read about people's lives and you sort of think, that's me. I've been through those struggles too. So I relate.
Mhm.
Then the storyline is something that gives you that hope and that indication that I could possibly do this too. It cracks open a past programming.
Mm. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And again, I think what you're highlighting here is one, it takes listening skills, right?
Hmm.
To be able to kind of like connect with people. I like the idea of a check-in question because you can kind of understand where people are at in that moment. You're talking about rapport, right? And I think the beauty of your storytelling, and I see it in the way that you're communicating with me today, is you do a fantastic job of setting a scene and inviting somebody into that to where you're sort of giving them little pieces to follow along to then get to the point or the meaning of what you're trying to communicate. And I think you're doing a very good job. I can see how you're quite the artist being able to train other people in this trade. But I know that this concept, the mind congruency concept, has five principles. So can you
Hmm.
sort of walk me through what each of those are and how it applies
Sure.
to maybe coaching or leadership, and maybe even how you extend this into your work with teams?
So the first part when you're dealing with another person, if you're working, they understand that you're doing some work with them, is the conscious awareness. And it's actually the first two steps almost fall together.
Mm.
The first two steps are conscious awareness and habit recognition.
Okay.
A lot of times we're not aware of what we do. We're not aware that something triggers us. You know, why is it sometimes you can see a person and suddenly they fly off the handle and you go, well, why? That was not a big deal. But there's usually a story behind the story. And that's something I use quite frequently as a term. The story is never the story. When somebody says something, that doesn't mean that's how they're thinking. That's what this conscious mind is given as an excuse, as a cover, so they don't have to explain. So the first part is delving in and understanding that they start becoming aware, and you become almost this mirror. As a coach, as coaches, our job is to extract from people, to help them extract this from themselves.
Right.
So we do that through holding this mirror up and asking questions that help them understand themselves. So they go, you're right. I've been doing this all along with my partner.
Mm.
We get to a point of that our language changes. Once they start understanding their their habits, which a lot of cases we don't, it's then that you can start tackling change. The third one is then the goal setting. There's no point setting goals if you still have all these barriers stopping you getting goals. I can pretend for a moment that I am going to go to the gym and I'm going to become a bodybuilder, which I have no intention of doing. But let's say that's what I wanted to do, right? Now, I'm a fairly focused individual, so I could do that. But a lot of people say, okay, it's New Year's Eve. It's going to be a great New Year. We've done this before. We may not do it as we get older so much, or I don't. But when we're younger, I think a lot of us do. This is going to be the year for me, and I'm going to
Yeah.
get fit again. And I've let myself go because I've worked so many hours, etc.
Okay.
We set the goal. We hire a gym membership. We go to the gym. We start getting sore and going, oh, I don't like this, which is interesting with mindset. Because when I get sore, I have the opposite reaction. I get sore and go, oh, I worked that muscle.
Yes.
Other people go, I'm sore. I don't like that. I'm not doing that again.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how our minds work.
Mm.
So we go do that. We might spend 3 or 4 weeks. We go, I looked in the mirror and I don't think I've changed at all. This is a waste of my money. I'm tired. I actually have other things to do, to be honest. I'm really busy. And we stop our goal. And we do this with lots of things in our lives. Now, this is not a new concept. I'm sure you've heard similar before.
Yes.
But what has changed? What has changed in you is really the question you need to ask. So then you can set your goals once you've done your work on you. Then you set your goals. Then you and a coach, if you're working with a coach, works on belief transformation.
Mm.
First is to recognize what it is. Second is to set where I want to go. The next one is the belief transformation side. And the coach plays different roles. Coach can be a manager in this example, but they play different roles and they bring different tools. Stories is the one that I lead with because if you can learn to structure a story, you can talk directly to the subconscious and you can start working on that directly. So belief transformation, and you talked about limiting beliefs earlier, needs to change because it has always interested me to look at two people and go, hold on, you're smarter than me. How come I can achieve more than you? Should that not be possible?
Yeah. Right.
But it is very possible. There are a lot of people in this world that, if we were to talk money, for example, who make a lot of money. I'm not saying that they're not intelligent, but they probably didn't do very well at school in some cases. And you go, how come they're a multimillionaire and I'm barely trying to survive in the job that I'm doing? They have a different mindset. And so they took different things, their limitations, but also things that maybe that are our limitations, and they move forward with them. We held ourselves back, not intentionally.
Yeah. Yeah. It is very interesting, right? Because, we might have grown up in a household where, middle class was what we strive for, right? Even though there might
Mhm.
be opportunities for us to extend into, I don't know, that 1%, right? But because, of the places that from the households that we come from, we limit ourselves from hitting that true potential, right? The pathway that you're outlining in these principles of mind congruency, I think it takes a lot of awareness in order to
Mhm.
work with teams in that way. But I also get a sense that it's not an immediate transformation either. That it
Everything is
really
ongoing.
takes rapport building, and it takes awareness, and it invites people to buy into this process as well.
Of course it does. And not everybody does buy into a process. So if you're managing a team of, say, 20 people, you have 10, 20 different childhood backgrounds. You have 20 different people that are single, married, in relationships, going through the issues that happen behind the scenes there. You have 20 people with different ambitions. Some people are ambitious and they would like to rise within your organization, so they will do everything. There's others that come to work and say, I'm just here to earn the money. We're all here to earn money. So
Yeah.
I will just do what I've got to do to get through the day. And so there's different mentalities. So this isn't about forcing things on people. This is about encouraging their own growth.
Mhm.
It may be something they were never encouraged as a young person. Now, we can argue backgrounds because our childhood influences our future. Now, when your listeners listen to this, the first thing that comes to mind is, so that means I can't be successful. No, that's not the case at all. There are many stories of people who've come from poverty to success because something triggered in them, usually at a young age, that they will not repeat what they are experiencing. And that ingrained thing has taken them forward into life. So we're all going to experience adversity. I've read many biographies in my life. And if you read biographies of people that are very successful, the first thing we do before we know anything about them is to say, look how well they've done. And they must have had it easy. Oh, look, their father was a lawyer. So they must have had it easy. Maybe they had it harder. Maybe that's harder when you've got that pressure from a parent that expects you to achieve as much as they did.
Mhm.
So I believe everybody can create change.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Americans are increasingly concerned about mental health, with nearly 9 in 10 voters seeing it as a crisis. Mental Health First Aid provides crucial training to identify, understand, and respond to mental health and substance use challenges. Gain the skills and confidence to offer life-saving assistance. We offer courses for individuals, groups, and organizations of all sizes, including specialized training for veterans, law enforcement, EMS, and educators. Visit mentalhealthfirstaid.org or email hello@mentalhealthfirstaid.org to schedule your training and make a difference in your community.
I so appreciate that perspective. One of the thoughts that I had as you explained this to me is there are parts of just day-to-day life that I don't enjoy. I would love to be better at doing my finances, but there's something about the finance process that I don't enjoy. But as you're explaining this, I'm almost seeing an invitation for me to do better by seeking out a storyteller who can teach me those concepts through story that I can connect with emotionally. And that might be a better way for me to sort of correct my behavior around my finances. What are your thoughts around that idea?
Well, I've seen financial coaches. That
Yeah.
isn't, sometimes they're financial planners, but not necessarily. I've seen people who just coach people with their money around budgeting, etc. Because the question is, why are you fearful of finances? Now, that might be because there's been some struggle in the past, could either be now or childhood, right? So you have these natural adversity to, I don't even want to, when I think about it, it almost hurts,
Right.
right? And that's
Yes.
not unusual because there's different elements of our life that we feel that.
Mhm.
You know, when you've been through certain things, you go, I just don't want to experience it. It reminds me of those environments, even though you're not thinking about it when it's happening.
Yes.
Subconsciously, you are. You're
Mhm.
replaying these stories.
Mhm.
And so we have to rewrite the story. And this is why coaches are really powerful, why really great managers who become leaders are really powerful,
Mhm.
because they lead with integrity and they do it with every intent of making that individual better, not just their own careers.
Mhm.
And that's a great difference and a distinction when you talk about management. Is that when I talk about this with corporations, is there are managers and there are leaders. And a
Mhm.
leader will take you on the journey with them
Yes.
and encourage you to become more than who you are. A manager, not necessarily intentionally, because a lot of them are never really trained,
Yeah.
will bring things to the table that are things such as ego, where they go, well, now suddenly I'm in charge. Everyone has to listen to what I'm saying now.
Yeah.
And yes, they do to a point until you lose them. And once you lose a team, then there's usually no coming back from that. They
Mm.
don't really want to know you and they don't want to perform for you either.
Mm.
So unless there's some incentive for them, they're not going to perform for you. So you have such an important role of extracting their best, which is hard to do when you're really, really busy.
Yes.
But if you have that engagement and if your teams are trained, which is what we do when we're working with managers, is to help them become true leaders. And true leadership is understanding the mind you're dealing with. Now, I'm sure there are people listening going, I'm not a psychologist and I don't want to be a psychologist. All I want to do is go to work, tell everybody what to do, and come home. And I get that mentality. I also understand that you should never take credit for the results if it's not you that's helping them get those results.
True. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think part of being a good leader is giving space for people to take responsibility for their achievements, right?
Mm,
And the qualities that you're outlining within a leader rather than a manager is not only just a shared vision, but also maybe like a language. I know in the past when I've worked with good leaders, I pick up on their lingo and then I start using or speaking as they
mhm.
do. And suddenly we are a team kind of working in a unified vision, right? And I'm kind of curious as you evaluate team building and high performing teams, what are some of the maybe essential elements for building and maintaining these teams beyond motivation or incentives?
First thing is to build an environment. And what I mean by an environment is that there's a lot of managers that I ask them, I say, do you have an open door policy? And they go, yeah, anyone can come and see me. You go talk to their employees and they go, there's no way I'm going to talk to this individual. They'll throw me under the bus
Yeah.
if they don't like what they hear. And so it's not really an open door policy. The door may be physically open, but people don't want to step through your door because they know that you will not support them.
Mm.
And so I've had many times in my careers where I've worked in large corporations and we've been at a department that other departments are relying on them getting their bonuses. And so when you have a team that can't cover everything they want, suddenly you're all the bad guys. And so I spent a lot of that period of defending my team, fighting for my team. Now, some managers do that. Other managers go, don't worry, I'll get rid of them or I'll tell them off or whatever, like they'll just play the game, and I do call it a game, of corporations or politics within corporations, which I don't particularly like. Or instead, your team can see that their leader is fighting for them.
Mm.
Now, as long as they've done the right thing, if they've done the wrong thing, then obviously you take actions. But if they've done the right thing and other people are just attacking because they want something from you or they've done something wrong and it's easy to use that person as a scapegoat, I would fight for my team. And they talk to each other. Manny went out and did this for me.
Yeah.
When Manny needs something, I will do it for him.
Mhm.
So that's the environment part. Part of environment too is understanding of parameters. This is what we're trying to achieve. This is what you can do, and this is what you cannot do. So, for example, I'll use sales again. There's a sales target. This is what we need you to achieve. But you can't do this to achieve that, right? You can do these other things. So there's certain value systems that we sometimes are treading on with other people. And the subconscious holds these values. So when you start to understand a person's values, which is really important to building a team, you then understand this person over here will do almost anything to get their bonus. This person over here will not step over the line. And then you understand how to manage them as individuals, even though they're still a team. So the team then understands that they support each other as well.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Again, I think it takes maybe a deep awareness of the people around you in order to best manage the team that you have. What sorts of questions are you asking your employees in order to maybe get a deeper sense of their values? Is that just come with practice and awareness?
I think I just naturally do it, but I've been doing this for a very
Okay.
long time.
Yeah, right.
I think what you do is this is the understanding part, which is really important. Whenever I took over teams, I had two types of meetings. I would have a overall team meeting to introduce myself when I took over, tell them my background, to explain to them why I might be qualified to be able to be standing in front of this room, so they get that comfort. I'm sure they've done their own homework before I've walked in the room anyhow. And then I tell them what we're trying to achieve, what I think we're trying to achieve.
Mhm.
I also then have individual meetings with everyone in the team. I deliberately want to sit down with them, understand why you're here. And it's interesting because people always give standard answers, because I do ask this question. So why are you here? Why this organization?
Yeah.
Why this job? Why do you do this? And then you'll get standard answers of, I really like looking after customers and all, and that's great. And I love that if they love that. But they're usually telling you what you want to hear, at least when you first meet them, because you're this new person they don't know.
Sure.
This is where building rapport is important, because we start off at the business level, and then I start asking you questions about you. I start using meta questions. I start looking at, tell me about your circumstance. Are you married? Do you have kids? Tell me about them. What. So they drop their guard and they go, oh, he's a normal person. Let's just have a general chat. And so then I start to understand a little bit more about them as an individual. Over time, you'll start to understand what they're prepared to do or they're not prepared to do. And that's when you start using things like stories and techniques, and you create this environment. So that's the first part. The second part is true leadership. And I've already mentioned a lot of these things. It's integrity. It's leading by example. The amount of managers I've seen tell their teams to do something that they're not prepared to do themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've done the same if you've worked in
Oh,
companies.
yeah. Yeah.
So as an employee, you're looking at them going, you say all this, but you don't believe it. And we know you don't believe it. And so you've lost integrity. And I always give the example, and I've said this before, even on other places, is that it's a little bit like being in the army. You're in a battle and you're telling your men to go over the hill. And I get it, as a leader, sometimes you have to stay back because you're the one who has to give these all directions. But they need to know that you're in the trenches with them, not sitting on a beach 100 miles away giving all these instructions. They respect you. They respect you because you've been in there and done it with them, and you'll take the blows with them. So true leadership has several principles, but there's to give you a bit of an idea, there's some of the principles of how you lead and understanding your own management style, which is what we do teach when we're talking to managers, most people work on not necessarily one style, but if you only work on one style, it only works in certain circumstances. So applying it across everything just doesn't work. And part of true leadership, I believe, and this is my own personal belief, is consultation. If you and I were working together, it's one thing for me to be in charge, but I am not going to pretend I'm the smartest person in the room. I want to know what Peter thinks. You've probably been in the company longer than I have. Tell me your views. Let me understand what you think. How can we improve this? That's another way of engaging you, because now I want to know what you think. I want your advice to me. If you were running it, what do you think we would change? And there are times that I've gone to make decisions in businesses, rung the individual up and said, look, I think we're going to change this, this, and this. And they go, Manny, you haven't thought about this. And I go, you're absolutely right. I hadn't thought about it. Why? Because I'm not outside there with you every day. I'm talking to you all the time, but I'm not always necessarily out in the field all the time with you. So that's why I think consultation is really important. That's not to say that you do everything an employee tells you to do. It means you take the feedback. You're intelligent enough to determine what will work and what will work for the group. And if you disagree, explain why, rather than say, no, we're not doing that. It's I don't think this will work for this reason.
Yeah, and that really kind of goes back to like that shared vision, right? Good leaders are able to communicate themselves effectively to where everybody understands the goal. I'm also kind of curious about, taking a few more steps deeper into expectations, because you kind of defined it a little bit by saying we're going to get to X by doing ABC and not DCDEF. But maybe share a little bit more about your experience with how expectations can help motivate and focus a team.
Articulation is really important, and you've just touched on it.
Yeah.
It's a matter of them understanding, where are you taking us on this drive? Where are we going? Expectations for me are, I'll try to think of some examples in my own career of expectations I worked in financial planning. In Australia, it's a highly, highly compliant environment. There are lots of laws around this profession. So number one, I don't think I even need to say it, but it does come across that I expect people to be compliant and not breaking the law in any way. For example, if we're in a team meeting, when I first started one of my teams, I had two girls that thought that they would try me, as in they thought they ran the team because there had been no management there for 6 months, and they had someone flying in and out from different states to try and manage it. So they thought that they could control this team. So we were holding team meetings, and they would deliberately start getting on their phones and doing whatever they want to do on the phones as if it wasn't important. And I would call them out for it. The expectation is that we're not on our phones. I get it at times you pick up a phone and you got to quickly do something. I get that. But if the most important part is your phone, then you probably don't need to be here. Now, I don't say that in the meeting. I would say that privately if that was the case. So the expectation is that we are working as a unit, individuals working as unit. So Peter has his own expertise. Pete's good at what Peter does. Do what you do. But I might have another team member says, Pete, I need help. My expectation is that we help each other. If you come to me and say, Manny, I need help, I don't know how to do this, I go, great, let's allocate some time. I will spend time with you. My expectation is that we do that for each other. Why? Because we're always going to get in a position that we don't know how to do something, and suddenly we start to fall behind and feel helpless. Together we move as a unit. I remember giving this story once to a group of mortgage brokers, because I managed mortgage brokers at one point too.
Wow.
And when I was a kid in I think you call it elementary school, we call it primary school here. We used to have a sports afternoon, I think every Wednesday, and we would all go off to different sports in the park, etc. And one afternoon, the teachers decided to change it up. They said, we're not going to play the normal sports everyone's playing. We're going to have these activities and you do them as a team. You get put into teams, and you get points for achieving these things.
Right.
And I can still remember one particular activity. So there was a good friend of mine at the time called Paul, and Paul, I think, was a natural leader. He just was used to leading other people. And he had a team of us, and we had an oval. Now, in Australia, we play a game called cricket, which you might be familiar with. And we also play our version of football on the same oval. They're very large ovals, right? So they're a lot larger than an NFL ground, right? And they're in an oval shape. And one of the activities was that we had to run around this oval and within a time frame. But if you didn't get the whole team across the line, you didn't get any points. So Paul, as a very young kid, said, right, now Paul was a little bit chubby. So was I at the time too when I was a kid, as a young kid. And he said, right, I'm not the fastest kid here. Russell's the fastest kid. What we wanted, so what his instruction to Russell was, you will pace us. He will sit behind us. Russell will lead us, and nobody gets left behind. And so we started off, we had, let's say, 3 minutes, whatever we had to do to run around this thing. And we started running, and it was interesting because I loved sports at the time. I didn't really like running unless I was playing a sport. If I was running for the sake of running, I thought it was the most boring thing in the world. I probably still do. No offense to the runners of this world. Paul stayed behind, made sure that no one fell behind him. And Russell was told, do not sprint ahead. Make sure we are with you.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was, and this happens in real life, suddenly you start to fall behind the rest of the team and you start to think, I feel helpless. I can't do anything. Your goal is to guide the whole team across the line together. And that creates an environment that everyone goes, it's us versus everyone else, not us against each other.
Right, right. No, I love that example. I love the example. And again, I know that they use those same techniques within the military in their training, right? Being able to run up hills and making sure that, everybody is getting up and we move as a unit, right? You're only as strong as the next guy behind you, right? That mindset creates safety. It also creates an environment that allows growth mindset of everyone around, of being able to push yourself because others can do it and doing hard stuff together is easier. And I
It
love
is.
that.
And so the next time you do it, it becomes easier. I'm not saying physically it's easier, it's mentally easier.
Yes.
It's the I can achieve mentality that starts to come through, and you start to change the way you think.
Yeah. I want to ask, as you meet with managers and leaders in different positions, and probably your own experience as employees, as those that do this work, what do you find themselves growing in themselves as sort of a result of putting this into practice? Like, are you finding that people's empathy grows because they're just more in tune with the person in front of them?
I think that naturally happens if you reinforce this and keep doing this. But I think what also changes is their approach to their own families.
Mm.
Because when I talk about the stages of how the mind is influenced at different stages. So we have the imprint stage at a very young age, and everything is just, when we're born, it's really just the subconscious. There's no conscious mind sitting in front of it. It's really just subconscious. So if you're a parent and you do certain things, which you may not necessarily be proud of, but you do it, or you fly off the handle, or whatever the case may be, even if that child doesn't have language yet, they have observation skills. And so they are observing how they're supposed to react in certain circumstances. So to answer your question, what they do if they really learn this, they realize this is something I can apply to other parts of my life. And my own child can become something better. Rather than me demanding them be better, I can find a way for them to find their own path.
Yeah, and I can imagine that the teams and management that come away from, these lessons and to create safer environments for their team, and corrective emotional relationships then spread into their families.
Agree. I
Yeah.
mean, look, the key word is team. Are
Mm,
these really teams or just a group of individuals that were put under a manager?
mm,
And
yeah.
we are still individuals, by the way. So we will approach things differently. But your job as a leader, to become a leader, is to turn them into a team. So like the example of Paul, we moved together, we achieved together. No one left behind.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And especially in sort of the time that we're living in right now with a lot of division, I think that kind of thinking can really be the hope toward a better future.
I agree.
Yeah.
Sometimes there is, like in the world, sometimes there needs to be, not destruction, but a breakdown of past thinking
Mhm.
in order to have new thinking.
New thought, yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah. This
I
is the
think we're
uncomfortable
heading
growing
yeah,
pains, right?
exactly. But growing pains is part of this world. Is
Mhm.
we're here to grow.
Yeah.
So we either choose to or we choose to move backwards.
Mm.
You know, like it's like when you grow a plant. You know, like you put a seed in the ground and you kind of water it, and after a few weeks you go, "Oh, how come I don't have a full plant yet?" Which is how a lot of people think.
Yeah.
You know, the gym example is similar to that. Is
Yeah.
why am I not built the way I want to be built now? Because you need to change and work on it until it becomes your norm. And once it becomes your norm, all the changes take place. And you may not even realize the changes take place. Other people do.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know, that happens in the physical world. You go to the gym, you work out for 3 or 4 months, your body has changed, but you've been
Yes.
looking in the mirror every day going, I think I look exactly the same as I did before. Yes, you probably did because it's incremental. But everyone else has come in and said, wow, you look fantastic. And that's part of what we do is to create change in our minds to become more.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I can see that. Well, I'm really kind of curious, as we're sort of wrapping up, if you could just leave our listeners with a final encouraging word, maybe about the power of their own potential and how your technique of maybe mind congruency can really benefit their lives.
Everybody has potential. It's a matter of discovering potential and then working on it. You have everything is within, and everything that you want is possible within a certain reason. But it is you sabotaging you. And until you realize that, then you don't move forward yet.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Manny, this has been awesome. I so appreciate your approach to genuine connection and really recognizing our powers of influence and how our communication of storytelling can be so powerful as we really kind of interact and influence others in our lives. Before we go, I really just want to ask you, where can our listeners dive deeper into mind congruency and your work, and where can they find your resources to connect with you?
Sure. Well, our company is called mygrowthcorporation.com. So there you're going to find everything that we work on. We work on different elements. So it isn't just leadership. There's Manny Fiteni training, which is the leadership side. So that'll lead you to one website. We also deal with a YouTube channel for children, which is about developing their skill sets,
Yeah.
but it may be a little bit different to our adults. And then we're coming out hopefully in the next month, a brand new app, which is an AI app, which is around flashcards, and people can develop their own flashcards for themselves or their own organizations, and they can speed up their learning no matter what topic it is, and they can compete against each other and learn with their friends or learn with people across the world.
Oh, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. Why flashcards? Why that? Why that learning style?
You know, courses are important too. So don't get me wrong. But
Yes.
I think that the way we've designed it is it's two components. Is number one, you can create a flashcard and you can learn at your own self-pace. But then we've created a battle environment whereby we introduce the gamified side of it, whereby you're competing against people. And we have a few different levels. So we have individual level, which you do for yourself and you get points and you move up division. So it's a bit like a game, right?
Mhm.
We then have a teams one, which is small business. And then we have enterprise, which is schools and universities and large businesses. And the way they are designed is a team environment. So let's say you have a team of people. We use flashcards because the trainer or a teacher can say, okay, here's the topic. This is, you learn about this yourself at your own pace. You can test yourself. Now, having done this type of stuff when I was in corporate as a much younger person, people will just guess the answers until they get them all right. They'll have a few goes and go, there you go, I've passed, I've got that over. That's what they wanted.
Yep.
And which is why we introduced what we call the battle brawls, where in the case of enterprise, let's say you're in a classroom and you've got a group of kids or adults in front of you. The teacher will set up a battle. There's two types of battles. One's a regular battle. It's a time thing, 45 seconds to answer it. Ask a question, has 4 answers. You choose. Fairly straightforward. The other one is a knockout. If you get 3 answers wrong in a row, you're out. Now, it's done on a team environment. So the teacher says, okay, they set it up. They set up the topic and the flashcard. They then get a generated PIN number and they say to the class, this is the PIN number, key it in. Everyone is allocated into different teams. So no one knows whose team they're sitting on yet until the team is allocated by the computer.
Yeah.
And then you get to compete. Now, no one knows your score, Peter. So if you're doing it, you can't be embarrassed and go, oh God, I'm not the smartest person here.
Yeah.
What happens is you see the team scores in live and you're competing as teams.
Yes.
As a trainer or as a teacher, I then get feedback afterwards and I go, okay, Pete takes a while to answer these. Either he doesn't know it or it's the way he thinks.
Mhm.
Also, he's accurate. He might take his time to think about it, but he gets 95% of this stuff right. So he gets this topic. And for me, it's like instant feedback. If you do a course, do I really get instant feedback as a trainer? I might get, if I'm running a course, I can tell by those replying to me, but they might be more extrovert. So I'm getting an idea of they get it, but the quiet person, I don't know if they're getting it. Using the flashcards, we get an idea of what their understanding is of something.
Mm.
And then we get it back as a team, but the teams then get to compete. There's a little bit of a game environment, but no one gets embarrassed by not doing well.
Yes.
The teacher understands the score. So if we look at it from a school perspective, teacher understands the score of what's been happening with the individual. The student gets their own too. Every subject, they go, this is where I'm going. And they get to see how they're progressing. So if you got this kind of mark, it's the same flashcard. You got this type of mark on this topic in a flashcard, but you got a lower or a higher mark in the actual environment, which is like being in a test or an exam.
Yep. Yep.
You then get feedback instantly going, I'm actually not doing as well. Or the teacher sees that. And then we've created a parent portal or a progress portal, because there's businesses as well, whereby a parent gets permission to see their own children and they can go, well, my child out of 300 people across this level is sitting at number 25.
Yeah.
And they don't know any other students. They don't know who got what, but they then go, okay, now I can manage this, rather than going, it's the end of the term and I'm going, what do you mean my child is down the bottom? How come I only know this now? Now, I know I'm
Yes.
not a teacher, so I don't know what they cover off. But do you know what I mean? Like, so that's why we've created this, a little bit of a game environment,
Yes.
instant feedback. People can do their own improvement and people can play flashcards when they want. The battles are only done in the team and enterprise by the trainers or the schools. So they can control what information goes into these flashcards.
Yeah. Wow. Phenomenal idea. I love this idea of sort of group learning. It also kind of encourages everyone's participation and really a chance to evaluate performance as well. So bravo. I really appreciate you sort of giving me the quick explanation on that. So thank you.
I hope that was quick enough. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's great. I can imagine how beneficial that can be for learning, as well as just a chance for team environments to sort of participate in a program like that.
Thanks. Well, we'll see. It's coming out soon. I'll send you something when we're kind of ready to go.
Please do, please do. But Manny, for today, I so appreciate you coming on to my show.
And I appreciate you having me.
And I want to thank you, our listeners, for taking the time to join us. You can follow us on our social media at Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, and more at Behavioral Health Today. And if you like our show, give us 5 stars and leave us a review. As always, the resources for this episode and an archive of all of our other episodes can be found on our webpage at triadhq.com/BHT. And we look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today. We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Triad Behavioral Health Network, all rights reserved.